Hey guys, so last week was actually October break, and I ended up going to Dallas, Texas to visit a few cousins and look at a few universities. And on my plane ride back to Jakarta, I actually created this render, which I did in about 90 minutes, and I have it all recorded. So today, what I decided to do is that I'm just going to take that footage and just commentate over it and talk about how I went around my process to create it, and which will hopefully give you some tips on mastering Blender. Okay, so I have footage over here which is actually straight from recording and it's unedited. So this is not fast forwarded at all, it's going real time. And I just want to keep it slow a bit for the beginning so I can have enough time to talk about exactly what I'm doing. So right now I'm starting off with the eye of the character. And the way I'm going to do this is that I'm going to start off with a plane. And I'm just adding some loop cuts to add more vertices to the mesh. And then I'm eventually going to delete the actual face in the middle. This way, there we go. So now I have something to work with. I'm just going to use this kind of like a pencil, I guess. I'm just drawing stuff out, but with points instead of a pen or anything like that. And whenever I start a project, notice that I try to keep it very minimal. I know some people start off with shapes like circles or whatever, and they have like 32 vertices right away. And that I find is really, really ugly and really difficult to do because you have so many things and you just get overwhelmed. Like right now, when I'm adding a sphere, I'm lowering down the counts just so that I can have something that's more manageable to work with. And yeah, I'm just creating the eyeball now just so that I have a bit of proportions and a bit of an idea about how big the eye should be. And what I'm gonna do with this as well is that right now I have the eye drawn in kind of like one dimension. As you can see, it's really flat, and that's because I just did it from front view. So now that I have the sphere done, what I'm going to do, just wait for it. Now what I'm gonna do, oh wait, I'm just still sizing that up. What I'm gonna do with the actual that I think sketch, I'm going to now start moving it towards the other axes, to the y-axis. Just wait. There we go, finally. So now I'm dragging it along the y-axis because eyes aren't flat. So that's how. And now that I have the sphere as a reference, I know exactly how it goes around. So yeah, I'm just starting to refine it. And just so you know, for this project, I didn't actually have much of a reference. Later, I'll take two sketches out just to look at it. But this is actually something that you wouldn't want to do. Whenever you're working on a project, the more reference images you have, the better. I remember Andrew Price from Blender Guru once said something along the lines of the best artists are the people who have the most reference images in their folder or something like that. I don't really remember what the actual quote was, but it was something like that. And here are the images that I'm taking. And normally with when you're creating people, you want to get pictures of people because yeah, you want to know exactly what they look like. But unfortunately, I didn't really have any on my computer, but I happen to have a few sketches which I did not draw. This girl drew it, and they were on my computer, and those were actually references that I used when I created the Ryu character, if you guys know about that. And Ryu was just something that I made for. Oh, actually, I started making it last year, and I have a time lapse on it on my channel. And I actually made the face last year, but then I kind of stopped, and that was just it. But then over the summer, I actually finished the rest of. Oh, not summer. It was for a class actually. I just ended up using it for my art class, and I finished up the model, and I created a piece called Eternal Suffering. So you can check that out. I'll have a link in the description. I have it on Behance. And right now, going back to the actual model, what I did was that I just took all those vertices and I extruded them outwards. And that's pretty much what I'm going to be doing for the rest of the object, or the rest of the character. It's just a constant pulling of edges and vertices to create the object. And now I'm actually going to start fast forwarding the video because I think it's going to get a bit slow. Okay, so right now the video is going 4 times real time. So it's fast forward a little bit. And I'm just doing the same basic principles, just a lot of extruding and a lot of changing and manipulating. And also that's something that you may want to notice, that with something like this, I'm not actually using any like fancy modifiers or fancy tools or anything. It's just the really basic. It's just grab, rotate, scale with extruding, some loop cuts, and yeah, that's pretty much it. It's just taking that simple basic philosophy or that simple basic idea and just maximizing it. So it's kind of like when someone's a painter, when someone's a drawer, like they're not really doing anything fancy. They're just taking their brush or taking their pencil and they're just using it over and over and over in so many different ways. So yeah, you don't really need to that's what I feel about 3D modeling, is that it's not really about, do I know all the shortcut keys or do I know all the different modifiers? Because I think there's not much to know. You just need to know the basics and then you just need to do it until you can find creative ways to manipulate everything, because everything's just manipulations. So yeah, right now back to the actual object. What I'm doing is that I'm just pulling it all down, trying to get more of the face. And I actually got this reference out, and yeah, I'm just taking it out because just as a reference to see how the face will look, or like a bit of the proportions, but I'm not trying to replicate that image. I want to try create a totally different one. That's just to see about like where the nose is, where the mouth is, stuff like that. But actually it's you shouldn't use a drawing for this, because usually drawings aren't 100% correct. So it's actually better to do it with photographs, but I didn't happen to have any photographs. So yeah, right now I'm just doing the nose, and I actually made a few mistakes doing it. I made it way too high and this is gonna look very, very strange. And yeah, the nose was probably the hardest thing that I encountered during this project. And yeah, I'm just trying to find ways to clean it up. Yeah. And there will always be situations when you're creating something and it just looks really ugly, and then you realize that everything you do is just making it worse. So there's times where you just need to brute force, just do it over and over, and there's also times where you just need to like start over. So the one thing you just need to not do is give up, because if you give up on something, or let's say just quit, actually I feel like then again giving up is kind of the same thing as giving up and starting over. That's good, just don't like quit, because then you'll never be able to overcome that object or figure out a way, because there's always a way to do something. Like I know some people are always like, oh, this is impossible, or impossible for me to be able to do something. But if you spend enough time and you do enough effort, anything is possible. So yeah, right now I just got the basic shape of the nose, and now I'm just trying to refine it. And because I already have all the vertices there, I just need to start reshaping them and putting them in better locations. And now I'm just trying to fix the transition and also try to get kind of like the cheek area because I noticed that it wasn't off. And also, one thing to note is that while I was creating this, I was also like touching my cheek and stuff just to see how the bumps are. So do that kind of stuff. And I think a lot of what a lot of artists do is that they actually have like a mirror next to them that they can always constantly look at their own proportions. And that's a really good thing to do. So yeah. Uh yeah, I'm about to finish the face actually. And this was actually one that I did pretty quickly. I was actually really surprised by how fast I did it. I think I'm not so sure how long it took, maybe 20, 30 minutes. I need to check the runtime of how long I actually took. Actually, no, probably more than 30 minutes. I don't remember. I'll check later. But I was really surprised because the first time I did it took a long time. The first face I created took maybe like 11 hours or something like that. It took a long time. But that's something I noticed as well. Every time I do something again, like let's say a face, I've done a few faces, and each time I create it, I feel like I cut down the time by like half. So that's something that you guys might want to do, is that whenever you're creating something, just do it a lot of times, because that will really get it fast. Or you don't need to do the same thing, but like the same idea, I guess. Because like let's say with a face, they're all faces, but they're all different faces. They're different characters. So that's something that kind of keeps it from getting boring, because they all have their own identity. And with this face, I wanted to create a very fear-looking look. I wanted the characters to be really scared, but that was a bit difficult to achieve, and I don't think I did it as well as I could have. But yeah, I think I'm going to fast forward this even more. Going to go to 8 times just so that we can get through this video, because right now it's getting a bit more repetitive. Okay, so now I ended up skipping forward to the part where I did the mask, and I'm actually not very satisfied with this, and I think I did a pretty bad job. So that's why I want to spend most of the video talking about the character. Because normally when you're doing something like a mask, you need to have an idea of what you're doing. Just going straight into it usually ends up pretty bad. And this one surprisingly wasn't as bad. But I really did not have a strong idea of what I wanted. So it looked a bit odd at some points. But ending up, because later on you'll notice that the whole shape looks a bit awkward. But then, because I zoomed in everything with the right camera, it all looked okay. So right now I wanted to create this character who has a mask covering himself, and how the mask looks really intimidating, but it contrasts to what he's really feeling, which is really scared. So that's something that I wanted to try and achieve with this model, and I don't know if I achieved that goal. Hopefully I did, but I think it wasn't as strong as it could be. But it was done in 90 minutes, so I think that was pretty good. Oh, and right now what I'm doing is that I'm creating kind of like hair, and I decided to just create this quick little object, and I just add an array to duplicate it a few times, and I'm just adding a bit of color just so I can see between the two. And yeah, I didn't really spend much time doing color with this one, especially because I normally you would use a lot of textures, but I didn't really have any with me. Oh, and right now what I'm doing is that I'm adding bones to this piece, and I'm adding rotation constraints and stuff. I think I might have a video on this, the last Blender tips and trick video or something. One of them where I talked about rigging. I explain a bit about how I did this, so I'm not really gonna talk about it too much right now. But I'm just using this quick little rig to just move the hair around nicely, or as nice as it can. And yeah, I probably should have added more joints, because and the hair is really big right now. And I kind of wish that I could change it, but it was kind of too late ish. So yeah. And right now, like, I really had no idea how the mask should look like. So I was kind of winging it, just trying to justify the looks and try to make it a little bit better. And then I decided to make the hair kind of be affected by wind to add that really cool, kind of cool effect, hopefully. So yeah, whenever you're doing things like speed modeling, just remember, practice makes perfect. And and yeah, just have a plan, because what I'm doing right now is not very good. And right now I'm actually kind of, my winging is not as bad, but like, well, if this was like, I've done lots of things where it just looks super ugly. So a plan is good. And right now back to the time lapse thing. I'm just adding a bit of color. See how it will look like. And I wanted to add kind of like a little glow. So what I did was that I just created a separate object and added an emission to it, just to add that cool effect. Oh, and now I think I'm gonna start doing the lighting and everything, and the compositing. And this is something that I kind of rushed, so I'm not 100% proud of it. But then again, 1 hour, so 90 minutes, so that's all right. And I think lighting and composition is something that a lot of people underestimate, because that's something that can really make or break your piece. And whenever I see a few artworks that, like, some people ask for advice, a lot of the times the model itself is usually good, but the way they present it is not as good. Like, the execution is really important. Because just simple things like photography rules, or like colors and stuff like that. And I guess this is actually not the best example of it. Well, I guess things like lighting. Lighting is really important. Bad lighting can really ruin a piece, and that's something that you should spend quite some time. This one, the lighting was not the greatest, because it was a bit underexposed, so I probably should have made it a lot brighter by the end. But what I wanted to do was I wanted to have that like reddish glow a bit, and I ended up putting some lights inside the actual mask. And just note that what I'm doing right now is that for those of you who don't know, I'm using cycles rendering, and I'm just adding planes, giving them emission textures, and adding color to those textures. So then they act as lights. And then on the object panel, if you scroll all the way down, there's a section where it talks about like visibility, and I just made it so that it's not visible from the camera. So that just makes it so that the camera can't see the object, but the texture that it's creating is seen. Or like, let's say as a it works as a light source. So right now, that's what I'm doing right now. I just unclick the camera thing, so then it won't be seen in the render, but the light it creates will be seen. So that creates a nice effect. And right now I'm about to finish this piece, and I was actually pretty satisfied with it. I think it looks pretty alright. And things that I would, if I had more time, I would definitely add textures, because textures should be here, but they weren't, because I just didn't have enough time. And also, I know that my texturing is not as strong, so that's something that I need to improve on. But yeah, I guess this is the end of the video. Let me just get an image out to show what the final thing looks like. Okay, so that's pretty much it. And this is the final model. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and hopefully it taught you a thing or two about it. If you have questions on 3D modeling or anything about Blender, you can always message me on my Facebook page. I'll have a link in the description below. And please like, favorite, and subscribe this video. And yeah, I guess that's it. Thanks for watching.